All right, thank you everyone for waiting patiently. So firstly, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm your host, Andrew Yao, a 10th grader at Washington Hills Regional High School and Development Minister of the Warren Alliance Branch. Alliance of Youth Leaders in the U.S. is a student-run NPO dedicated to the advancement of communities across the nation. If you're interested in joining and participating in volunteer activities, feel free to check out the Alliance website that I'll post in chat after this introduction. Today, we're very honored to have Lawrence Zhu, Penn Debate Society member, ranked #1 public forum debater in the country in 2019, and the executive chairman of Washington DC BranchOut, an organization similar to AYLUS. I'm sure you'll find some value in tonight's seminar. If you have any questions, please type them in chat and we'll do our best to answer them. All right, welcome Lawrence, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew. With that, we're gonna just skip the formalities and we'll get straight into the presentation. So I'll be sharing my screen shortly. Let me know if there are any technical issues via like you can't see or there are any issues otherwise. All right. Okay, great. Can everybody get a good view of the presentation? Perfect. Okay, cool. So today we're gonna be going over a seminar called Debate, Public Leadership, and Public Speaking. For me, I think that this is something that really hits home close to my heart, as this is pretty much something that I've been doing my entire life, even when I haven't really been sure what I've been doing. Debate, public speaking, and leadership have always been constants in what I want to do and what I've been able to do in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to start through the slideshow. All right. So before we go into like any of the specifics, I'm going to be quickly covering some of the agenda as well as the like general style of presentation for today. So outside of some quick introductions at the start, I'm going to be covering a little bit about my story, about things that I've been doing in the past, and my progression as kind of like an individual, you know, not only studying, but also an individual like working in volunteering, an individual working in debate. And I'm going to be making sure that I cover all these aspects and talking to you guys about not only what I think the value of debate is, but the value of leadership and the value of volunteering as a whole. So quickly, just as a bullet point list of what we're going to be covering today, we're going to be starting off with the introduction to my story. Then we're going to be talking about debate in public speaking. So this is pretty general. So just generally how debate works, you know, what debate is, functionally, how does it like offer you anything or any sort of benefit? What did it offer me? And then we're going to be tying a lot of the things that I talk about in terms of debate to the leadership aspect of the seminar, which is the main focus of this. And we're going to be ending off with some applications of external skills learned in debate, as well as some personal experience, as well as some conclusion on BranchOut. So this seems like a kind of like messy organization, but don't worry, it'll make sense as I go along. And please try your best to follow along. If there are any questions at any point during the presentation, feel free to ask them in chat. I'll check it periodically and I'll see if I can do my best in terms of answering them. Secondly, I'm pretty used to talking kind of quickly. This is just a fact on who I am. I think I've always been kind of a fast talker. So if you feel like that's the case and you want me to slow down or anything like that, feel free to do so. I'd be very happy to slow down the pace or cover something more in depth as the presentation goes on. And lastly, there will be a short 15-minute or could be longer question and answer session at the end. I'm like a very open person. So you can pretty much ask me any question. If you want to know about, you know, my current exploits in hobbies, or if you want to know about like my college application process or anything that you would want to know about, I'm very happy to answer. I'm very open to pretty much anything. And yeah, great. So we're going to be ending off with a conclusion and we should be good with today. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and let's start with the presentation. Okay, great. So quick intro on who I am. This kind of outlines pretty much everything that I've done in the past or anything that I would have expertise in. So in terms of background, I grew up in Northern Virginia, pretty close to the DC, and I went to this school called Oakton High School from 2016 to 2020. And I currently attend the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia since 2020 to right now. I'm currently majoring and studying economics and health and society with a very specific focus in healthcare financing and healthcare markets. So this may seem kind of like an abstract concept to you guys, but don't worry, it's basically just studying healthcare economics. And that's something that I've really been passionate about, and actually something that was my interest was spawned not only from debate but also from volunteering. My involvements in high school and also in college, as they are right now, I've always been involved in debate since I was a freshman. So I did high school public forum. Basically, that's like the kind of debate I did. Yeah, and then I currently do college American parliamentary, and I also do some coaching. I currently coach the Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology team pretty regularly, but also some consulting externally. And yeah, actually today we had a tournament and I just came back from that. So great stuff. I also do a lot more professional things now that I'm in college. So if you want to ask about consulting or finance as careers, I'd be very happy to answer them. I'm currently part of quite a few consulting teams, as well as leading the largest one at Penn called Muse. I'm also part of the Wharton investment team, WITIG, and also a business fraternity, PCT. But I think those are kind of like abstract terms. So yeah. And the last thing is community service. This is something that I did a lot in high school, and I feel like it's something that's going to be very like close to what you guys are doing here at AYLUS. And as a result, I'll be talking through some of my experiences in BranchOut and tutoring as well. Lastly, on debate achievements. So this is generally where I'm coming from. I was the rank 1 debater in 2019 for public forum debate. But that was only for like 3 months. And then in November, I dropped off to rank 9. Very unfortunate. But yeah, pretty much public forum debate, huge part of my high school career. And, you know, it was really, really fun for me. I was also the president of our debate team, being the captain for 2 years prior. So I do have a lot of experience in terms of leadership in debate, and I'll be talking about that as well in gratuity. And lastly, I did have like top placings at tournaments around the country. So for example, if you're familiar with some of the tournaments like UPenn, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, I've done well at all of those. And if you ever have questions about like tournaments and stuff, I'd be very happy to answer them as well. All right, now that we've gone kind of like the general introductions out of the way and you know a little bit about me, I'm going to be talking about a little bit of my story and my background. So it kind of makes sense where I'm coming from and, you know, what I'm talking about when I go on in this presentation, right? All right, let me get one quick sip of water. Okay, so my story kind of goes like this. Before I came into high school, I was actually a really, really bad student. I'm going to be honest, I had like terrible grades, little motivation to do anything. I think I had like all C's in middle school. I got into a lot of trouble. I got like suspended plenty of times as well. So coming into high school, I was kind of like the worst student. And I really didn't have any direction or like career aspirations. But I kind of knew that I like wanted to go to at least a decent like college institution, right? I feel like that's definitely something that all Asians can definitely say for certain, right? Like we want to go to somewhere like good and then, you know, be proud of like what we're doing, right? And I also didn't really know what I wanted to do in terms of career aspirations. I was like, maybe I'll do something like computer science. I feel like that's a very regular path to go along, right? You know, just study computer science, math counts, maybe go to like school to do computer science, become a software engineer, right? And at the time, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But when I came into high school, I felt like that I needed some kind of change in terms of like not only like my lifestyle, but also like what I was doing. Because I felt like I was getting nowhere, right? I was like literally doing terribly in school. I was like getting suspended regularly. I was just truly not a good student. And then when I came into school, I decided to do this thing. Basically what I did is I signed up for literally every single club that my school offered, every single one. And as a freshman, right, when you're a freshman in high school, you don't have too much to do in school. I basically tested every single club at the school. I was like, do I like this? Do I like this? Do I like this? Do I like this? And I went down the list of every single popular club at the school. I had tested stuff like, you know, weaving blankets. That was something I tried. I tried like technology student association. I tried pretty much everything. And at the end, I kind of really settled on volunteering and debate. And I'll talk about why in just a sec. But for me, like generally in my story, I found a passion for public speaking and debate. And this was something that I really, really liked. In my freshman year, when I tried it, I was like, wow, I really, really like arguing with other students. And that may seem kind of sadistic, but at the end of the day, it was really fun for me. And you know what? It was actually very professional, and it really led me down a better path in terms of what I was doing in high school. I mean, not only that, it kind of refined my skill sets and kind of defined what my achievements could and could not be. And based on that, I kind of was allowed to have a lot of different future aspirations, right? When you're a debater, your focus is less on like, oh, computer science, you know, like Java, Python, right? Rather, more it's focused on critical thinking, logical thinking, speaking, and being able to think quickly on your feet. And of course, there will be this kind of like future aspiration is exactly what heavily influenced me to look into other fields, such as consulting or, for example, finance, and give me the past experiences and interests in public service that I got from debate. So generally, that's kind of like what my story looks like. And if you have any questions along this line, feel free to ask them. I see that there was one question in the chat. I don't know, that could be yes, hopefully there will be. So, all right, great. So let's go into the next section, which is debate and public speaking. So quickly, before I do anything into this debate and public speaking, I just want to like tell you guys that first, I'm going to quickly define what I'm talking about so you guys have a good idea of what I'm talking about. So there's no confusion. And then we're going to be getting into like the more meat and potatoes of this specific topic. So quickly, what is debate? Exactly what am I talking about? Like, why do I keep mentioning this like activity? Like, exactly what is it, right? So quickly, I'm going to define it for everybody, so we're on the same page in terms of like, what it is, right? Okay, so debate fundamentally, at a not that complicated level, is kind of just an intellectual exchange of ideas. That's it. So when you, for example, argue with your friend over who the better character is in this show, that is, yes, technically a debate, right? Because it's technically an intellectual exchange of ideas. But the general term debate is something that you hear a lot, right? For example, you'll hear it in presidential debates. So I'm sure a lot of you guys here have watched some kind of political debate. I don't know, maybe the 2020 presidential debates, you watch them and you're like, wow, like that's something that happened, right? And then maybe perhaps you had some ideas in terms of what goes into a debate. That would include things like persuasion, confrontation, and critical thinking, right? So even at the most fundamental level, where you're just arguing with your friend over, like, for example, who the better character is in a show, right? You have to come with logical reasons and a lot of logical ideas and critically think in terms of exactly why X and Y is true, right? So generally, more professional debate is more structured, and they'll have like this thing called a resolution. So resolution is like a topic. So an example resolution would be something like, oh, we should legalize all illicit drugs, yes or no, right? And the two sides would just be arguing today, yes or no, having a like out on the resolution. So generally it's a more professional version of like maybe your lunch table type arguments, but generally it's still pretty good. And for example, in debate, there are going to be a lot of different types of debates, so the topics will differ. Some debates will be about like philosophy, like utilitarianism, deontology. If you don't know what those are, it's like should we value more people, the cost and benefits, or should we value like the process that we go about these things? And obviously, like there's going to be a lot of focus on public speaking and oratory. So making sure that you're a good speaker that is not only persuasive, but is like logical and fluent and liquid. And of course, these things are all playing into what is a debate. And the end result is a very formalized version of a lunch table argument, which not only is very enjoyable, but also includes a lot of logic and evidence tied into it as well. So really quickly, what is like the skill benefits of participating in debate? Like, why would one want to participate in debate? What is the purpose, right? Outside of just, arguing with others, if you just really enjoy that, right? What would be the skill benefits, right? What do I feel like the key skill benefits and leadership benefits are in terms of participating in debate, right? And I think these can really be outlined into three kind of like buckets. So the first one that I'm going to be talking about is called life skills. So for me, this is just super true. And I think any single debater can tell you the same thing, that in terms of like what you can learn in debate, it's not, a formula. It's not an algorithm like you would learn in, for example, calculus class, right? It's not going to be, how can I do a derivative? It's not going to be, how do I do an integral, right? Rather, it's more focused on the development of skills. So what would this look like, right? This could be very simple, right? You could range from learning how to improve public speaking or improving your impromptu speaking, right? A lot of this right now, right? I'm not reading off a script or anything. It's what I think based on like the bullet points, right? So inevitably, these are skills that I picked up in debate, right? So at the end of the day, being able to put words together, that's a key skill that, debate offers you, not only in terms of practice, but in terms of realistic and quality. So of course, debate also covers other key professional skills that are rarely accessed anywhere else. I think this is just super true as my career has gone on. Like one, for example, a lot of people are not able to critically think at the speed that a lot of debaters are, because you're always under a time constraint. Like, oh, I have to come up with X arguments in literally 30 seconds, right? You're under a lot of time pressure and you put yourself under a lot of practice in order to have very quick critical thinking. And I think this is literally just come in clutch for me all the time. For example, when I take a test, I'm really good at guessing because I can critically think exactly what I feel the answer is going to be. Or on a more like very standardized version, most debaters are extremely good at the reading section of the SAT. This, for a lot of Asian students, I know is always the most difficult section, the reading section of the SAT, right? Because, normally we're quite good at math. We're quite good at, like algorithms, stuff like that. But debate offers you an entirely different section. You can take the reading section and never have troubles with it ever, because it's so easy to synthesize, critically think, and logically think to a point where it's basically child's play. Lastly, you have a lot of exposure to high-level reading and research. Inevitably, when you're like arguing over some very complicated topics, for example, you're arguing over stuff like the Belt and Road Initiative, you're arguing over the South China Sea, right? These terms might be foreign to you guys, right? But that's all right. You're exposed to a lot of high-level reading and a lot of research. Along this note, I would go along with the second general like sub bucket, which is learning about issues, right? So I think for me, one important thing about debate is that it offers you insight onto things that you would never really like learn about elsewhere. There's no class that's just like, hey, let's listen to the news, guys, right? Instead, you kind of just hear about these issues tangentially, maybe through the radio, stuff like that. But debate forces you to engage with a lot of these issues. So all of the topics are going to be on things that, you know, like you hear about on a daily basis: gun rights, right? Healthcare, all these things, critical topics that not only change the lives of people like in the world, but also critically change your life as well, right? But these focus on like current events and issues is something that is just not offered elsewhere, right? You can't just like, unless you're like purposely researching these things on your own, it's sometimes very hard to stay updated on all these issues and be super educated on all of these issues. And that's something that I think that is kind of underrated about debate. And on this note, I guess like a quick personal anecdote. Throughout this presentation, I'll be throwing in personal anecdotes to keep it interesting. This is exactly how I got into what I wanted to do. My favorite topic in debate was basically, should we reduce the price of drugs, like pharmaceutical drugs? That was my absolute favorite topic. And ever since I researched it daily, like I always really liked it. I kept up with it. Then I came to college. Then I realized that I knew like way more about it than anybody else. And I was like, wow, I'm just going to major in this. And it's been like very free for me ever since, because I know so much from debate already. And I could write papers on it like off the top of my head. It's just something that I really was passionate about and something that I really enjoyed. Not only because it was a very unique market, but it was something that was super influential in terms of what I felt was important. And at the end of the day, I thought that debate was the only like really exposing factor that I would have gone in terms of learning about these current events and like critical issues, right? And lastly, you can form a lot of your own opinions. As you can probably imagine, if you argue over like topics all the time, you're gonna be super opinionated, right? You're gonna be like, wow, that's so stupid. That's such a dumb opinion, right? Rather, you always think your opinion's right. Well, at the end of the day, debaters will give you like, the idea of debating is that, you know, you support one side or the other, right? And you develop a strong philosophy and you create a opinion and a basis to generate your own opinions instead of just following other people's. Lastly is the experiences in communities. I think this one, we can cover this for a little bit, but my personal opinion, because debaters, you know, like everyone wants to win and everyone tries really hard, it's a nice formal space to argue and learn from the best and brightest from around the country. We'll talk about this on the next slide, but basically people that do debate are oftentimes just like the people that will go to Harvard, just period, right? And at the end of the day, there's some of the smartest people in the country, and you can really engage with a lot of top debaters from people from areas around the country that you would never like really engage with otherwise. And there's a lot. It's a great social environment. People are very helpful. You know, making sure that tournaments are fun. You get to meet up with like your friends from all across the country at different tournaments, and you guys get to argue against each other. It's actually really enjoyable. Okay, and this is generally my thoughts on the uniqueness of debate and the value. So I'm going to cover, this is going to be really short, but I thought it'd be really cool to throw this in because I found this research yesterday, and it was like a really, really cool new study. So basically, some people from a very popular summer camp decided that they wanted to go through every single debater from the top 100 in 2016. And they basically broke down exactly where they went to college, exactly what they ended up doing in the future. So this is from 2016. It was recently done. So they're all like in the job market right now. And exactly what they're doing, exactly what their focus is, blah, blah, blah. And it's actually really, really cool. So I guess we'll cover quickly on the undergrad colleges. I think a lot of you guys are probably pretty interested in this, but I actually just thought it was really cool. So really quick, for example, the most attended college by top debaters was just Harvard, period, like by like a large margin. U Chicago was second, UC Berkeley and UT Austin, right? Then Stanford, Columbia, Michigan, Northwestern, Duke, Emory, right? So pretty much top debaters all kind of just trend to the same schools. And a lot of schools that accept top debaters are kind of like, they like debaters in the first place. So for example, Harvard's extremely famous for just admitting tons and tons of debaters. Same with U Chicago, very same with U Chicago. U Chicago is one of the most famous, just admit all the top debaters they possibly can. Pretty much if you're top 100, you can like guarantee yourself admission to U Chicago. Like that's just how much U Chicago likes debaters. But that's just kind of like the identity of U Chicago, right? They're like very quirky. They're very like out of the box. They value critical thinking. Those things are all things that debaters offer. And also like quickly on career choices, you can clearly see how debate kind of affects the career choices of individuals, right? I talked about earlier how a lot of debaters really enjoy like critical thinking, and a lot of debaters really enjoy like, analysis. And those are ironically, hilariously, literally the top three like career choices by debaters, respectively, finance, consulting, law. And those three like specific career choices are the career choices that you're going to be using a lot of public speaking in. You're going to be using a lot of critical thinking in. You're going to be using a lot of data analysis in, right? And as a result, those are the most common career choices. And there's a reason, and I'll quickly cover that later on in the presentation, but generally it's because of the key skills that you develop in debate. Great. So hopefully this is interesting. Some of the takeaways that I guess you could have is debaters go to good colleges, but much less so, I think you should take away that debaters develop a lot of skills that allow them to be successful and go to better colleges. So if you wanted to know from this aspect, because I know this is like kind of a funny aspect for a lot of you guys, I think this is really cool. So I decided to include it. Great. So quickly on participation, I've like really just sold you on debate, right? I'm like the #1 salesman for debate, right? And quickly, like how do you participate, right? I'll quickly cover it. It's just, for example, you can participate in your team's club. For example, you could join the Thomas Jefferson debate team, right? That's just based on what school you go to. Pretty much every school has a forensic/debate speech team. So as long as you just ask about it, it should be good. But there also is independent participation. I won't cover this for too long, but you can basically participate as a partnership. So you and one friend, and you can potentially join a third-party club. It's kind of up to you. So this is kind of just really quick on participation. On the right-hand side, you can see some pictures of like the Oakton debate team. And that was us at UPenn winning tournaments, having a good time. All right, so now we're going to get into kind of the more important part of the, sorry, let me get a drink of water here. Kind of the more leadership-focused centric, part of this presentation. So we're talking a lot about how debate links with leadership and how my takeaways in terms of leadership from debate. Great. I see that there is one question in the chat, and I did also see that, yeah. How did you improve your grades so fast in high school, considering how time-consuming debate is? Oh, that's a great question. So I think that one, debate kind of gave me a lot of skills necessary to be successful. I'd always been the worst at like English and like history, but once you've done debate for a little bit, those subjects kind of become really easy, especially in terms of writing and reading. I think that was a big part of it. But two, I think I had a real lifestyle change. Like before, I pretty much not like really consider school as too important, but like I really valued debate as something that was really important. So I spent a lot of time on it. As a result, I also like decided that I would spend more time on things that are more productive. And yes, I would agree that debate is a very time-consuming activity. It just is. Like, no one's going to say that it isn't. It is a very time-consuming activity. But nonetheless, if it's something that you're really passionate about, it's not too hard to balance the time. I think in high school, I did a lot of things, like a lot of activities, while also trying to take like the most difficult class schedule. And it resulted in a pretty difficult time management schedule that I can talk about at the end. But it was definitely something that I actually really liked and something that was kind of important to me in terms of being able to accomplish all the things that I wanted to do. All right, so from here, we're going to be linking some debate with leadership, as well as some of the things that I took away from, debate, leading in debate, and also some of the things that debate taught me in terms of leadership. And lastly, we're going to be covering some BranchOut stuff. Great. So what does leadership within debate kind of look like? So a couple things, right? So there is, first of all, like, your club assigned like leaders and club structure leadership. So for example, you might be the captain of your debate team, the president, right? A lot of debate teams are kind of structured like sports teams. So like, there's the team captain, maybe there's like a coach, right, et cetera. So for me, I was the president of my team for 1 year and the captain for 2 years before that. So I did have a lot of experience in terms of leading on my team. So it's a pretty unique opportunity to build the team creatively. So for example, maybe you want to construct the team in a specific way, right? You want your team to focus on collaboration. You want your team to focus on X, Y, Z. You can definitely do that as a leader within your own club. And something that's really going to be important that I'm going to talk a lot about is that a leader sets the standards for others to follow. So if you're doing something poorly yourself, your subordinates do not have like an incentive to do the same thing better than you because you set the standard. So this is something really important to me. And I think that it was something that's like super true. So as a leader within the debate sphere, you set the standard for other debaters to follow. So if you put no effort into debate 24/7, the debaters under you aren't going to put any effort either, right? The result is that you have to set the standards and you have to do well in order to see the people under you also want to do well. So there's also some national debate teams. I would also classify this under leadership within the debate sphere, right? There are these huge applications for like yearly debate teams. Like, for example, there's this thing called Team USA, which is just like a conglomeration of some of the better debaters around the country that want to debate like against other countries in a specific debate format. Normally they're pretty decent. And they're selected based on like a numerous amount of factors to represent the US internationally. I never even knew about this until I was out of high school. Then I went to Penn and I met a lot of these Team USA members. And I realized like kind of what it was. So I kind of wish that I applied for it when I was in high school, but that's okay. And also lastly, a lot of these national debate teams will lead their local debate teams. So that's kind of like a natural progression of leadership as well. Lastly is debate instruction. I think that in terms of debating, a lot of debaters will come back to coach other debaters, because, like at the end of the day, just learning debate from scratch is kind of difficult. So a lot of debaters will coach after graduation. And it's an extremely common choice for debaters. I think maybe 45% of all debaters will come back to coach like somewhat full time. And a lot of jobs are available in terms of high schools, summer camps, and other yearly programs for you to lead not only like the next generation of debaters, but to build connections and kind of like develop some semblance of like work experience. Great. So I'm going to quickly talk about some of my personal takeaways from debate leadership. So I think like the first thing that I took away from debate is continuous persistence. So what this kind of looks like is that rather than debate being difficult as an activity, debate is difficult in terms of logistical steps. So this is something that I really experienced. So I came from a really small school. My debate program was in my specific division, like 3 people large. So I was kind of tasked with the idea of like rebuilding the entire team, making sure that we're like a solid team, right? So we started from absolutely nothing. We had no resources, nothing. So it was difficult for the team to kind of grow because there's a lot of factors that you have to kind of sort out, right? You have to find a teacher to sponsor you. You have to find the financial support from the school to allow you to go, especially when you go to a public school like mine. It's kind of difficult to do that. You have to convince like your other teammates in other divisions that you want to go to like X tournament, right? And it's kind of like a scalable effect. So what does this sound? What is a scalable effect? So a scalable effect is kind of like how much effort you put in is how much you get out. So as a personal anecdote, in order to build my team, I think I think I've went to the principal's office at least like 30 or 40 times, not for bad reasons, but to like ask the principal for funding or, for example, to approve our like trip document. So for example, we would have to write like a professional document on like what every trip's purpose was. Like, we're going to go here, we're going to do X, Y, Z, here's the agenda, here's the rules that we're going to be following, here's what we're doing, right? And we had to make sure that the principal signed off on all these things. We had to have her approve on pretty much everything that we would do. And establishing our teams need to go to national tournaments as well. So for example, I would have to talk over our teacher sponsors, like raising our club dues so that we would be able to have the funding to go to like, for example, UPenn or Harvard in the first place, right? And this kind of like struggle really taught me that like, if I wanted to do something like from a leadership standpoint, right? It takes a lot of continuous persistence. Like, you have to continuously persist until you can succeed. So if you're like wondering, oh, Lawrence, how did you grow your team? So my team went from me, just 3 people, to over 150 students. And we became the largest club at Oakton. That I personally think that the reason why a lot of people joined my club was not because like I'm like the most popular person ever. It's not because, debate is the most interesting subject either. Rather, it's because we were winning. So I think a lot of people want to join what like the school is good at, right? And our school was only good at debate. That was like the only thing we were good at. And as a result, everyone joined because we kept winning. Like, for example, I requested a bunch of our like accomplishments to be announced on the loudspeaker. Oh, we won state, we semi at Penn, we did this, X, Y, Z, right? And as a result, I felt like a lot of people decided to join debate because we were already winning. And that's something that like our school kind of always lacked. We were just kind of a regular public school, like a pretty decently sized one, but we didn't have anything special until like we started debating, and then we started to win. And that would be something that our school was not only good at, but something that our school was pretty proud of. And I think that was like kind of important, not only to our school, because it kind of made our school special, but also kind of established that like, this might be something you're interested in because it's something that our school is good at. So secondly, one of the big takeaways that I had from debate leadership was strong mental fortitude, right? So debate is a competitive activity. Naturally, you're going to be arguing against some other really good debaters. And a lot of the time, they're going to really frustrate you. This is something that I really, really, really felt very personally. I would lose a round. I wouldn't think I lost. And I'd be pissed, so pissed for the next like 2 years. There was just one round. So this is going to be my personal anecdote for this specific subcategory. There's this one round. It was at the end of year final tournament between the top 100. It was like all the best debaters in the country gathered at this one tournament. And it was in April. So it was really late in the season. We were almost done with school too. And we debated it. So basically in one of the rounds, one of my opponents did this extremely frustrating strategy. And we beat it. But the judge kind of just voted on something that was totally tangent, like not related. And as a result, we just lost. And I was super pissed off because we had traveled to Kentucky. You know, it was such a long drive. You know, it was the end of year tournament. We really want to do well. And at the end of the day, like we lost over this absolutely stupid reason. And I seriously contemplated quitting debate. I was so upset. But that's like the natural progression of a competitive activity. Things aren't going to go the way that you always want them to go, right? You're going to win and you're probably going to lose, right? And that's like super normal. But being able to, you know, I know this is kind of oversaid, but like stay strong even after losses, rather adapt quickly, right? Because debate rounds are one after another. So making sure you adapt in just 5 minutes. So for the next round, even if you lost, is super valuable in terms of maintaining your mental fortitude, right? A lot of debaters will, you know, they'll go like, maybe they'll lose the first 2 rounds and they'll lose hope and they'll just stop debating seriously in the tournament. That's not how the tournament should go, right? If you like being able to maintain strong debate leadership means that you're able to maintain a strong mental fortitude, especially when things don't go your way at tournaments. So for me, I definitely think like, especially since this kind of goes back to the question that was asked earlier, but since like debate was also paired with a lot of like really difficult school classes, right? Because you're probably taking some harder school classes in order to, you know, like keep your GPA up and, you know, keep your transcript like looking fresh, right? In my opinion, it was a lot of work. I felt like a lot of the days I'd like finish all my schoolwork and then I would have like 2 extra hours of debate research at the end. But those were kind of like rewards for me. I actually really did enjoy researching for debate. And as a result, like they were quite exhausting days, but I think they were like quite like they had strong payoff. 3 is like team delegation. So I think a lot of us, I think this is definitely true for some people that are like more introverted, is even when you're in a leadership position, you don't really want to, you know, assign things to other people. Or if you do, you don't like fully think about what the strengths and weaknesses are between your team members. So I think this is something that's really important. And this is a lesson that I like learned very quickly once I was the president of my debate team. High school is a busy time. You have to do a lot of activities. You have to take a bunch of classes. You have to play some sports. I played tennis, right? So it's very time consuming. So for me, I think the only way that I was able to, for example, write all the briefs for every tournament, make sure that all of our tournament finances were in order, make sure that our Excel sheets were like looking good, take track of all the attendance at every debate meeting, book meeting rooms, meet with the principal every week, do all of these things. I think the only reason that was even possible is because I had a good team around, right? I made sure that I had a strong officer like selection. You know, I know the vice president really well. The vice president will do X, Y, Z when I can cover for when I can't, right? These are all things that are definitely super important. Making sure that you delegate to your team members so that they can most aptly and effectively help you out in terms of developing your like club, super important. So as a personal anecdote, there's this one week at my school that is just designated as the most difficult week in like all of the year. It's basically the end of the second quarter. So it's like January 21st, 27th-ish. It's that week. And that's just widely regarded as the most difficult week at school. Like ever, almost every class will hold their like end of semester finals. And they're extremely difficult. And ironically, we planned a tournament in New York City the weekend after the Hell Week. So as a result, everybody was swamped. And the only reason we were able to get through it is because I was able to delegate correctly, making sure that my vice president took a lot of the responsibility when I couldn't, making sure that, you know, the captains took the responsibility when I couldn't. And as a result, we were able to get through it. And not only that, but we did well at the tournament as well. It was Columbia. It was a really good time. And it was in New York City. So it was exceptionally fun. Lastly was setting the standard, right? So I talked about this a little bit earlier, but I'm going to go a little bit more in depth here. So it's really important for a leader to set the standard for what's important, right? Making sure that because others look up to you for directions and standards, if you're doing a poor job in terms of like, you know, I'm doing X, Y, Z, I'm like not focusing on debate, I'm like not trying that hard, I'm not prepping, I'm like doing all these things, then the people under you are going to do the exact same thing, right? You set the standard. That you're in a president position and they want to be like you, right? And as a result, if you do something bad, they're going to be like, oh, I can probably just do that by just being bad anyway. And the result is kind of like a cycling effect that sets a standard for everybody behind them as well. And it's kind of like a cyclical standard, right? Making sure that you set good standards and making sure that you have a sustainable method to maintain your team's excellence is key. right? So for me, I think that was something that was really important, was that I had every single varsity debater on our team take a novice like little. So basically just somebody that they can mentor on a very personal level. And I think this sets a standard for pretty much everybody, right? You want to do well, sure, I can give you the resources. I can make sure that you're doing well. I'm going to put you behind like a good mentor to make sure that you're doing well. And ever since, I think this has really worked. Our debate team has stayed really strong. We're still really good. And making sure that like the people that I mentored were still doing well is pretty important. And I think this is like kind of the idea of setting the standard, right? You are the leader. So as a result, you set the standard for everybody under you. You do a poor job, so will everybody else. Okay, great. Oh no. Oh, it just skipped a lot. All right, so we're gonna quickly shift to BranchOut. So really quick, I'm gonna establish a link between debate and BranchOut, like why they're related at all. So in my opinion, debate actually grew my interest in social issues, right? I like felt like once I did a lot of this research, I was like, oh, X, Y, and Z is like so bad. And I felt like I should do something about it. So I joined BranchOut, which is kind of like it's a mid-Atlantic volunteering program. So I'm going to quickly describe what we do. And it's going to be somewhat similar to AYLUS. So I guess it'll sound kind of familiar. Basically, it's focused on empowering disenfranchised youth in the DC metro area. So what does this look like? It'd be taking a lot of like high achieving students and having them help like less fortunate students in like educational like advances or like other regards. So one of our most famous programs was that we ran all of the TAs for our Fairfax County, Montgomery County, and Loudoun County summer schools. So every single summer school class had one of our TAs in it. So our organization would send one student to every single class at those summer schools all across like Virginia, Maryland, DC, and make sure that we were like having a meaningful impact to every single one. That was one of our most famous programs. And we grew to a size of helping over 1,500 plus students served. We were probably like the large, I think, yeah. I remember that we were the largest like volunteering program in the Mid-Atlantic. And we were very, very sizable. But obviously COVID had a hit on like how it's looking, but I did end up leaving after because I graduated. But yeah, so the idea here is like, it's kind of like a volunteering program focused on helping anybody who's like, you know, less fortunate work on like educational advances. So yeah, I was kind of inspired to join this in the first place because of debate. I like wanted to join it because, you know, debate grew my interest in social issues. And I feel like debate really gave me the opportunity to climb the ranks. And I'll talk about that in just a second. So skill application within BranchOut, I thought that a lot of like the, for me, kind of debate like also played in this as well. So I'll talk about that as well. But for me, I think a lot of skill application came within BranchOut. So for example, in this specific social service club, we would host like a lot of lectures, festivals, teaching, etc. And each, like as the leader, you're expected to communicate well, right? Because at all of these events, since you were the leader, I was the president of, or co-president of the club, you're expected to speak at all these events. And you know, speaking in front of like 300, 400 people, that's not like an easy task for anybody. So the result was that like I made sure that I utilized kind of like the public speaking skills that I learned in debate. And the result was that, you know, I gave like good speeches every single time. And this kind of actually got me into how I got into like BranchOut's leadership structure in the first place. I was kind of like in freshman year, I was kind of a nobody. I didn't really do anything in BranchOut. I like was just there for 2 weeks. But when at the end of year like conference happened, I volunteered to speak about my experience. And I gave like a 3-minute speech that everyone thought was really good at the very end, even though I was like a freshman. And I actually thought that kind of like kicked me into the BranchOut leadership structure. Like they were like, oh, wow, this kid like took the initiative to go speak at this event, even when he didn't have to. And the actual result was that I was like included in more conversations in the future. And that's why I was able to, you know, do better in the BranchOut leadership structure and ultimately come to co-president, right? And I think like taking this initiative was something that I kind of like discovered from BranchOut, being able to make sure that you go through with your plans, even when like it doesn't seem like something that's required. When it's not required, that's when you can make the biggest difference, right? Because you can kind of make the separation between yourself and others. Very simply, if it's not required, most people aren't going to do it. But if you do it, you kind of set yourself aside. And in terms of synthesis and summary, I thought this was actually a really important skill. So for example, every year we'd have to synthesize together like our summary and reports, like gather data on like what we thought was good and bad about our year's performance. Like this summer we did this really well, but you know, we did this pretty exceptionally badly. We need to spread to XYZ area. We need to diversify our portfolio and here, XYZ, right? And being able to synthesize that information and kind of like give it and summarize it and give it to my like superiors and team in a more digestible format was also something pretty important. And I think that really resulted in the success of not only our club, but also my personal experience within BranchOut. And yeah, lastly, as like a team lead, you often have to help your team reflect, right? If this is not something you're doing, it's 100% something you should be doing. At the end of every single like week or session, you should reflect with your teammates on what you thought was good, bad, what should be changed in the future. And that requires a lot of synthesis and summary and honesty. So quick personal anecdote, I'll try to again include these so it's a little bit more interesting. My year 2 of BranchOut, I was like a project lead for our like one like operation of our like organization. So after every single week, I would offer them like a quick speech on what I thought was good and bad about the week, and we brainstorm on what we should change for the week. And that's why at the end of the day, we were the most well-performing like operation within BranchOut, because we consistently reflected on what we did poorly and what we did well, and made sure we adapted and changed so that you can most effectively do well in the next week. So lastly is flexibility. And I think this one's really underrated. And I think that not enough people talk about it, especially within high school organizations, right? Everyone's really inexperienced and no one really knows what they're doing because you're all high schoolers, right? That's natural, right? The result is that a lot of problems will arise very quickly. And depending on how flexible you are and quickly adjusting you are, that's how you effectively adjust and address those problems, right? For example, you address these unforeseen events logically and efficiently, right? So for example, let's say, I'll give you guys a quick personal anecdote here as well. So the operation that we did was aiding community center in Fairfax County. And this was in my junior year. Senior year. And then the senior year before the summer before my senior year, sorry. And basically what would happen like before every single day is something would go completely awry. So almost every day, something bad would happen. Like, oh, our machine was broken today. XYZ problematic, right? Blah, 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 right? And being able to quickly adjust with your team, making sure you make split-second decisions that are not only like optimal for decision-making calculus, but also like optimally like structured is critical. Being able to do that quickly and making a cohesive plan as fast and logically and efficiently as possible, I thought was a very underrated skill. And this is the idea of flexibility, right? You can change even when problems happen very fast. And lastly, on this note, right, being able to listen on your team's feedback to make the most optimal decision is also pretty important, especially when you're in a problem situation, something that happens that you didn't expect. So this happens all the time, right? You can't plan for everything, especially since like high school is just such a variable time. The result is that you need to be not only flexible, but variable with pretty much anything that happens. Alrighty, with that, I think that's going to generally conclude my presentation in terms of, what I'm going to be covering in terms of leadership, debate, and skills. So from here, I do want to open it for question and answers for the next about like 15 minutes. And then we'll conclude with some like closing remarks. So I'm going to quickly address the questions that are in the chat. So again, you can ask me about quite literally anything, and I will be very happy to answer it. So I'll cover the first one that I saw. So how to participate at debate as a younger student, like 6th, 7th, or 8th. So yeah, that's a great question. Most middle schools will also have a debate team. That's something that they actually will have. And yeah, also middle schoolers are very free to participate in high school tournaments. And that's actually true. A lot of high school tournaments don't have an age restriction. So if you technically wanted to participate as a 7th or 8th grader, you can. It's actually totally allowed. But the big difference is that the high schooler debaters are going to be really good, right? A lot of high school debaters are going to be like quite smart. So, you may not come out and win right away, right? That's like totally normal. But yeah, you can participate in high school tournaments as a 6th, 7th, 8th grader. Moreover, there's also middle school divisions at some tournaments. So you would be debating against other middle schoolers. And lastly, yeah, there's normally like some kind of forensics club at every single middle school. But if that's not the case, there are some third-party options and independent options to participate. Okay. Would you recommend some high quality, good reputation debate summer camps if you have the info? Yep, sure. Yeah, so number one, I would recommend VBI, Victory Briefs Institute. This is the one that I went to for 2 years in a row. I also went to NDF, but I think you should avoid that one. I didn't like it that much. So Victory Briefs Institute, I went to the one in LA. It was really, really fun. I'd never been to LA before. I'd never even been to California. So that was really, really exceptionally fun for me. But debate camp is, one thing you should know about debate camp is that it's less about not only developing your skills, but it's kind of more about like creating networks and making friends so that during the year you can talk about them to like exchange information, maybe exchange preparation so that you guys can more optimally do well on the circuit. Did you have any debate training for debate when joining, and how did you get so good at it? Also, are these colleges hosted debates for PF and PF only? Yeah, so this is a good question. Let me grab a quick drink of water first. So when I came into high school, I had minimal training in debate. In 8th grade, I did this thing called We the People, which was basically just like a congressional speaking event. It was not really debate. I would not classify it at all as debate. But yeah, no, when I came into high school, I had like zero experience. I had like no idea what I was doing. Fortunately for me, when I came into the team, one of the three members in my specific division at Oakton High School was my sister. She was not very good at debate. She actually put no effort into it at all. But she kind of like gave me a good idea what the general idea of what debate is, to be like, oh, this is a case, this is a rebuttal. But she didn't really know what she was doing either. She didn't really put much time into public forum either. So actually for me, I kind of learned it all on my own. Yeah, for me, like a lot of schools will have like coaches, right? For example, I coach Thomas Jefferson, right? And they have the opportunity to ask me a bunch of questions about like what I did and what I didn't do. For me and my debate partner, we actually had nothing. We just had to learn it all on our own. We'd go to debate camps over the summer, but we never hired a coach. And I feel like maybe we should have hired a coach. Maybe we'd have done better earlier. But I think that in senior year, we kind of just maximized our potential. We just did as best as we could all the time. And how I got so good at it was mainly just passion, like constantly debating as many tournaments as possible. And one huge like roadblock for me was that my school just didn't allow tournaments. Like they would only allow us to go to maximum 3 tournaments a year in junior year. In my freshman year is 1. And it like took some real campaigning to get my principal to approve the other 2. So the result was that I had to debate a lot of independent tournaments that were not totally affiliated with the school. This was true even up to the end of senior year. And that required me to like, go to these tournaments on my own. So we didn't get to go to as many tournaments as like other debaters, but it was really just a lot of effort. But I also feel like it was also partially natural talent. We actually just really loved it. Like it's an activity that we really enjoyed. So for example, me and my debate partner, we would, meet up every day after school. We talk about XYZ. What strategies do you think was good? Did you read anything important yesterday? XYZ, right? And we explain anything that we find with each other. And I think that it was a lot of passion, but also just, for example, something that was also a bit of natural talent. I won't deny it. I think we were both kind of good at speaking already, but that's definitely something that you can develop quite quickly. What are some tips you have for improving public speaking? I have bad social, okay. Great. Improving public speaking. Yeah. So number one way to improve public speaking. This is going to sound really odd, but this is the number one way to improve public speaking, in my personal opinion. Unlike the rest of debate, some debate like forms, it's very algorithmic. There's like a set way to win the round. You have to win X, Y argument, and you have to structure it like this, blah, 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 right? That is not true for public speaking and like just raw speaking criteria, right? You have to be able to just speak at a very natural, liquid pace. In my opinion, the number one way to improve public speaking that I honestly feel like nobody talks about is every time that you, like, for example, make a speech or you do any sort of public speaking. For example, in my case, I recorded all of my debate rounds. So the result is you should record everything that you would say in terms of like not like every conversation, every word you say, rather every speech or some kind of presentation you have, record it. Why do I recommend you should record what you're saying? One, it allows you to reflect on you, right? If other people give you like feedback, it's not always going to be totally honest, and it's not always going to be like the raw truth. But if you listen to yourself, that's the only way that you're going to give yourself the most honest feedback, because only you understand what is the most truthful about yourself, right? The result is that you should record everything that like you do from a presentation to a debate round. And this is the number one way I would say to improve at public speaking, because you can reflect not only on yourself, but you can also reflect on it in the future, right? A lot of public speaking, right? It only happens one time. You can't go back and be like, I remember the entire thing, right? That's not true. Instead, you want to have this recording in hand to be able to kind of reflect in the future, right? Let's say you listen to it one time, you can listen to it again the following week and make the changes approximately, right? Some other ways you can go about fixing public speaking. Let's say you have problems with posture. This was my personal problem. I had a huge problem with posture. Every time I debate, I'd be like, hunched over my computer. I look really bad, right? So the way I fix that is I'd read my speeches in front of a mirror. I'd record it, fix it accordingly, go to the tournament and do as such. So that's one way that I recommend fixing it. But I think this is something that not a lot of people talk about. The way you improve public speaking is reflecting and practicing. But that happens the best when you record what you're saying. Okay. Do you coach middle school students? Yeah, I coach kind of everyone. Right now, I'm kind of busy with college, so I'm taking a break from coaching. I'm mainly just focused on TJ, but if I do have free time, I'd be happy to coach additional teams. Yes, Susan, it is just victory. So like victory, like winning, brief. So BRIEFS. Wait, I'll just type it. Okay. could you leave your, yes, my email is left here. If you ever have any questions or anything like that, feel free to ask me. Again, I'm very open. I'm very happy to pretty much help you guys with anything you want. During debate, do you have to stick to one type? No. If you feel like you value a different type over yours, then just debate that other type. No problems at all. In my personal opinion, I stuck with the same debate type all 4 years. And I only started debating like occasional LD or policy tournaments in my senior year just for fun, because I kind of wanted to just see what they were like. But you don't have to stay in the same one. But it kind of like a lot of principles will translate between all of them. But I kind of recommend if you're debating a public forum or policy tournament, event with a partner, I recommend you stick with the same partner. Why do I say you should stick with the same partner? Because a lot of the time you want to build like partner synergy. And this is only possible if you debate with the same partner over and over. I debated the same partner without question every tournament for 4 years. And at the end, we didn't even need to talk to each other. We just knew exactly what we were going to do. And that's something that we thought was a valuable asset that not a lot of other teams had. Also, yes, I did host a lot of summer debate classes at the summer in the past couple of years, especially during COVID. I think like for me, I had nothing to do during COVID. So I decided, why not just host a debate class? I think it was pretty successful. I really like teaching debate class. And I think like, what is the difference between PF or Congress? Yeah, great question. So there are 4 types of debate. So 4 types of, I'll quickly type them out. This is not like super important for everyone, but if you guys were curious, these are the 4 types of debate. They're all different kinds. They're called divisions. So the difference between, for example, PF and Congress specifically is Congress is more like a group. So there's going to be like a room of people and everyone's kind of going to be arguing with each other. So it's like the most apt way I can put it is like, it's kind of like a parliamentary style. So like, for example, somebody will say a proposal, people will come up to talk about it. And it's kind of like a long 4-hour session. PF is different. It's just 2v2, very straightforward. You and your partner versus 2 other kids. And it's one judge who wins, right? It's very straightforward. It's exactly what you would picture a debate to look like. It's exactly what public forum is, right? And everyone's arguing over very real issues. It's no like garbage issues, like no like random nuclear war arguments. Most of the time, it's very straightforward in terms of like issues. The topics might be something like, should we do Medicare for all? Gun rights, question mark? Should we legalize all illicit drugs? Should we put missile defense in South Korea? Stuff like that. It's stuff that you hear in the news, and it's stuff that it's very common for you to hear. Congress is a little bit different. You kind of make the resolutions as you go in the round. All right, I think that kind of concludes the line of questioning. I'll keep it open for a little bit longer. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask. I think we still have a little bit of time. Again, if you have any questions about pretty much anything, we'd be very happy to answer them. So we'll keep it open, and yeah.
All right. Thank you, Lawrence, for this seminar, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. Yeah, just as Lawrence said, we'll keep the questions open for another minute or 2 before we make some closing remarks. So if anyone doesn't have any more questions, we will begin the closing remarks. Oh, there's another question.
I think I'm not totally sure if it's recorded or not. Andrew, could you give some insight on that?
Yeah, the Zoom meeting is being recorded. I'll be sure to post the full recording of this seminar on the AYLUS website later. I'll contact the president of AYLUS and then we'll make sure it gets done. All right, cool. If there's no more questions, we will begin the closing remarks.
All right, perfect. So I'm going to give just a quick couple sentences on closing remarks. So in all, I just want to say thank you everybody for listening. I really enjoyed giving this presentation. It was quite a bit of work to put it together, but I think hopefully it was helpful for everybody. Just generally a quick recover of what I covered today. I talked about debate, what it is, general things about debate, the value of debate, key skills that you learn, leadership in debate. I also talked about some of the value added of debate leadership. And I also talked about BranchOut and some of the lessons that I learned from it. Some conclusions and closing remarks in all. Hopefully you guys learned something. And if you guys have any questions at any point in time, feel free to reach me at, I already typed my email in the chat, but I'll type it one more time. This is my school email. I would be quick to respond. If you message me on this, I will probably respond within an hour minimum. As a result, you can feel free to email me at any time. I'm quite free. So yeah. And of course, if there are any other questions, feel free to reach out to Andrew, or if you have any personal inquiries for me, I'd be happy to listen to them as well. All right, that's kind of all for me. So Andrew, you can take it away.
All right. Yes, thank you, Lawrence. And once again, thank you everyone for coming tonight to this seminar. That seems like for all the time we have for today. So, yeah, so thank you all for coming tonight, and especially thank you, Lawrence, for sharing such valuable information with us. We hope you guys learned a lot about public speaking and leadership. If you have any questions, you can pursue them through Lawrence's email. He'll try his best to get back to you. All right. Have a good night, everyone. Take care. And AYLUS executives, please stay behind.